If you own or manage a commercial property in South Africa, from a large shopping mall to a small office block, this is the story of a legal duty you cannot escape. You hire professional contractors to handle cleaning, security, and maintenance. You trust them to do their job safely. You assume that if their employee gets hurt on your property, it's their responsibility, not yours. This actual case from the Supreme Court of Appeal is about why that assumption can put you at the center of a major lawsuit. The story begins at a shopping mall in Johannesburg, owned and controlled by a company named Chartaprops. The respondent, Mrs. Michelle Silberman, was visiting the mall when she slipped on a pool of a slippery substance that had been spilled on the floor. Oblivious to its presence, she fell and was injured. In response, Mrs. Silberman sued two parties for her damages. The first was Chartaprops, the owner of the mall. The second was a company called Advanced Cleaning, an independent contractor that Chartaprops had hired to keep the floors of the shopping mall clean. The central question was clear. Who was legally responsible for the hazardous spill that caused Mrs. Silberman's injury? Was it the contractor paid to keep the floors clean, or the owner of the property who invited the public onto its premises? The stage was set for a legal battle that would travel all the way to South Africa's highest court of appeal. In the High Court at Johannesburg, Silberman's legal complaint was not that the companies had created the hazard themselves. The substance could have been spilled by a cleaner, but it could just as easily have been spilled by a member of the public. Instead, her complaint was an omission, a failure to act. She argued that the companies had negligently failed to detect and remove the hazardous substance from the floor in a reasonable amount of time, and that this failure led directly to her injuries. The evidence showed that Advanced Cleaning had a system in place where cleaners should have passed over any given spot on the floor at intervals of no more than 5 minutes. The court found that this system, if followed, was adequate to keep the floors reasonably safe. The evidence also showed that Chartaprops, the mall owner, kept a regular check on the contractor's performance, with its manager personally inspecting the floors daily. Despite this system, the trial judge found as a matter of fact that the spillage had been on the floor for 30 minutes or more at the time of the incident. This finding became the factual cornerstone of the entire case. Based on this, the High Court concluded that Advanced Cleaning was negligent for failing to detect and remove the spill, and that the property owner, Chartaprops, was vicariously liable for the negligence of its contractor. Both companies were held jointly liable and both appealed the decision, taking the matter to the Supreme Court of Appeal. There, the judges would have to conduct a deep analysis of the law to determine if this initial judgment was correct. Was Chartaprops truly liable for the failure of its independent contractor? The judgment of the Supreme Court of Appeal was split, with two different analyses presented by the judges. Justice Nugent argued that a person who invites the public to a shopping mall is expected by those visitors to have ensured the floors are reasonably safe. He reasoned that the public is entirely reliant on the person in control of the premises to ensure precautions are taken. Therefore, he concluded that Chartaprops did have a higher, non-delegable duty to ensure the floors were safe. Because the evidence showed the spill was on the floor for an excessive time, this duty was breached. In this view, Chartaprops was liable for the damages. Justice Ponen, however, presented a different and ultimately decisive analysis. He argued that the correct approach is to apply the fundamental rule of our law. A person must only exercise the degree of care that the circumstances demand. He noted that Chartaprops did not merely hire a contractor, it did more. Its manager consulted with the cleaning supervisor each morning and personally inspected the floors on a regular basis. Justice Ponen stated, "That being so, it seems to me that Chartaprops did all that a reasonable person could do towards seeing that the floors of the shopping mall were safe." He concluded that hiring a competent contractor and then reasonably monitoring their work was a sufficient discharge of their duty. With two powerful but conflicting legal analyses from the judges, the final outcome of the appeal depended on which view would carry the majority and become the binding order of the court. The final, binding order of the Supreme Court of Appeal was based on the judgment of Justice Ponen. The court ruled that the appeal of the property owner Chartaprops was upheld. The claim against them was dismissed with costs. This means Chartaprops was found not liable for Mrs. Silberman's injury. Simultaneously, the appeal of the contractor Advanced Cleaning was dismissed. The court declared that Advanced Cleaning was liable to Mrs. Silberman for any damages she could prove. This judgment provides a crucial and surprising precedent. It establishes that while a property owner has a duty of care, this duty is not absolute. The court found that a property owner can fulfill their legal duty by appointing a competent, independent contractor and taking reasonable steps to monitor their performance. The ruling clarified that the primary fault and legal liability for the negligent omission, the failure to clean the spill for over 30 minutes, lay with the party that was contractually hired to perform that specific function, the cleaning contractor. The case of Chartaprops v. Silberman is a landmark decision that provides a nuanced answer to the question of client-contractor liability. It demonstrates that a client who can prove they acted reasonably by hiring and monitoring a competent contractor may be absolved of liability. It places the direct legal responsibility on the contractor to adhere to the very system they were paid to implement, making them accountable for their own negligent failures.